Welcome to Disaster Preparedness. This is class number 5. I'm Ann Forrest. Delighted you're here, and we will get started. What should my plan like? We tell folks in disaster preparedness, we tell folks to make a plan a lot, but I think it's rare that you see somebody's actual plan. And I think it's very helpful to see what a household does and gives you an idea of kind of how to do it. So I'm going to go through what my family plan looks like, and hopefully that will help you start your own planning. So to plan smartly, you have to know your hazards. I didn't realize I was moving to earthquake country until I got here. I've never lived in earthquake country before, but Seattle is prone to earthquakes, even though we don't have them very often. So really smart people at the Office of Emergency Management put together something called the SHIVA, Seattle Hazard Identification and Vulnerability Analysis, the SHIVA. And they look at it every year. They talk to the scientists, they talk to seismologists and weather folks and all kinds of folks to find out what is our biggest issue. Has anything changed in this list? And fortunately, it doesn't change very often. There is a little juggling of the top 10 or whatever. But for the most part, earthquakes, well, since I've been doing this, which is about 8 years now, earthquakes has always been at the top. Not because we have them very often, because obviously we don't. But if we were to have one, they impact so many parts of our lives. Traffic, and it could cause injuries. It messes up our ability to communicate, all kinds of crazy stuff. So earthquakes are always on top, not because they happen often, but because they're so impactful if they do. And the other ones that you'll see are a little bit more common. And the ones that are highlighted in red are ones where we shelter in place. And we basically shelter in place for earthquakes. If we had an earthquake, there is no plan to evacuate everyone somewhere else, because where would we go? We are surrounded by a lot of water. Bridges might be messed up. So we really have to just sit tight and wait for things to get better. And that's the same thing you do. That's what you do in earthquakes. That's the same thing you do for a lot of these, a lot of our top hazards. Snow and ice, you don't go anywhere. You just try and stay warm where you are. Same thing with windstorms, power outages, cyber attacks, if we were ever to have those. Basically, you just sit tight in your home, wherever you call home, and wait it out. Same thing with disease outbreaks. We all lived through the pandemic. We really were just kind of sheltering in place at home. And same thing with excessive heat. If you have the ability to keep cool in your house, you stay there. Maybe some of us have to go to cooling centers, but for the most part, we don't leave. Our hazards are not hazards where we can run away from them, not like hurricanes on the East Coast or the Southeast, where you get a couple days heads up and you can pack everything up and run away for a week and a half or whatever until things have gotten better. We don't have that option here in Seattle. We shelter in place. So fortunately, a lot of what you learn preparing for earthquakes are also very helpful in these other hazards that we have. So those are the top hazards. What we try and do here in Seattle is prepare for an earthquake, because if you're prepared for an earthquake, you're prepared for a lot of these other top hazards. So why do I need a plan? Well, because we don't think clearly when we are faced with new situations. If you haven't thought this through, then you're not going to be thinking clearly, and you may not make the smartest choices. So if you think about this while it's not happening, figure out what you would do, maybe write it down. Then if you ever need it, you don't have to think at that time. You'll kind of have it already put into place. And also because communication is really difficult after disasters. Everybody, if we had a big earthquake or any kind of big event, everybody's going to jump on a phone and try and talk to their loved ones, which means the phone lines get overwhelmed. So your ability to communicate after a big event is really low. So trying to figure out how you and your loved ones are going to come back together, where you're going to reunite at. It's hard to do that after the event. You really need to think about that ahead of time. So, like I said, communications are often down, especially post earthquake. Maybe there's no time to figure out what to do, like a house fire. You should be thinking about those kinds of plans before you ever have something like a house fire. And also, the more you think about it, the more you plan for it, the more often it comes into your mind, the more solidified in your in your muscles, in your brain it is. So the more times you think about it and maybe do it, the better you're going to be able to do it quickly when you need to. And then just peace of mind. If you've thought about it, maybe it'll never happen. That's actually kind of my philosophy in life, is if I prepare for it, it'll never happen. So start with this scenario. It's Thursday, it's the middle of January, and it's like 3 p.m. So hopefully, you and your other household members are out and about doing whatever. Maybe you're in school, maybe you're at work, maybe you're stopping by the grocery store, maybe you're picking kids up from school, who knows? But probably middle of January, 3 o'clock, it's not super dark yet. You're probably out and about. And it is dark and cold and rainy, because that's what January is like. Like I said, everyone's out and about, and there's a strong earthquake. What would you do? So if you could talk to your household members at that point, what would you say? What's the plan you would make? And then write that down. That is your plan. Just don't assume you're going to be able to talk and figure that out after the event. More than likely, you won't be able to. So imagine scenarios. What would you do? That's your plan. So this, like I said, this happens to be the Forest family plan. So there's 3 people in my household. This A is me for Anne. This is where we live, is in Northeast Seattle. My teenager is currently in Capitol Hill, and my husband is down in the VA. He works at the VA hospital. So on a Tuesday or whatever in January, this is where we would all be. Andrew would be at work. I would be at home. My team would probably be at his house in Capitol Hill. So if there's an earthquake, we all know to drop, cover, and hold on. Don't run out of the building screaming like most people do. Stay where you are, drop, cover, and hold on. After the earthquake stops, check on those that are around you. Make sure everybody's okay. We all know to do that now. The next thing we're going to do is control our utilities. Let me back up a second. We are going to turn off the water to the building. Always do that. We are going to smell for gas and listen for hissing. If we believe there's a leak in the gas, we're going to turn off the natural gas to the building. If we don't smell it, if we don't hear it, assume it's okay and leave it on. If there are any damaged or frayed wires, or we smell insulation burning, which is kind of a plastic smell, then we would find the electrical box and shut everything off. Otherwise, leave electricity on. So that's how we control utilities. The next thing we do is we reach out and we communicate with our family members. And that's done by sending a text. Remember, text is best. And when we send a text, we're going to make it count. It's not going to be a lot of expletives or exclamation marks or anything else, not a lot of questions. We are going to tell folks how we are, where we are, what our plan is moving forward, and the date and the time that we sent the text. So we're going to send that to our family members, our household members. We're also going to include our out-of-town contact person on that text chain. Their job is to make sure that we on the ground are talking. And possibly, like in the case of my family, my mother-in-law in Las Vegas knows to call my mom and say, hey, I've heard from Anne, I've heard from her husband, I've heard from the kid, everybody's okay. So my out-of-town contact has a list of what to do. So there's the little graphic for the out-of-town contact, and she's just making sure everybody on the ground is able to communicate. We also have GMRS radios. All three of us have. It's GMRS is General Mobile Radio Systems Service. Um, it's kind of an easy type of radio to get. There's no test to take, which is why we got them. And we can communicate using these radios. So that's just a different thing that we do in our family. Our plan is Dad is going to be stuck at work for quite a while. Like I said, he works in the healthcare field. He is not coming home for a while. There are patients to take care of, the ones that he has currently in the hospital and the ones that will be arriving. So he is not going anywhere. He's going to stay at work. The teen, the plan is to shelter in place if possible. At some point, yeah, I'm not exactly sure how this will work because the teen just moved to Capitol Hill, but the teen may come up to the house. I may go down and get him. I need to talk to him more. Anyway, eventually Dad can leave the hospital, come up, get the teen, and they can walk up north together. One of the big issues in our family is the ship canal because both family members are below and one family member is above the ship canal. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. The walk home is going to take a while. So crossing the ship canal, the things I looked at was liquefaction, which is a very interesting phenomenon during earthquakes. Wet ground, especially wet ground, and ground that has not been there for very long, that was deposited there by rivers. So it wasn't put down by glaciers, a million years ago or whatever it was. It's newer ground and it's not as packed as solid. That's when the earth shakes, that ground that's not packed so solid kind of becomes like like quicksand. It's wet, it's really hard to get out of, and things in it start sinking. And then when the earth stops moving, the earthquake's over with, that liquefied soil becomes hard again, which is great, except everything has sunk into it, and now you have to dig everything out. So that's some of the stuff I looked at when trying to figure out where to cross the ship canal for my particular family. So that's liquefaction. I also looked at landslides. I looked at the ages of the bridges that cross the ship canal and whether or not those bridges have been retrofitted. So I'm just going to give you the highlights. Here's two bridges I looked at. This green one is a little bit newer than the yellow one. Also, the cuts, I'm not very good with geography. I forget what this cut's called. There's one there and there's one over here by the university. Those cuts are man-made. They cut through the ground. They're not very far. It's not a wide cut. And the edges are very smooth. It's interesting. So those were definitely places where I thought my family members could cross. So this is where I looked at landslides. Oh, let me back up a second. These areas that are pink are areas where landslides are not landslides, liquefaction is very likely. So this bridge, pretty good. There's not much liquefaction on the sides. This bridge a little bit, and then this cut here a little bit. So none of them are great options, but not bad options. And then I looked at landslides. All these little red dots are landslides that have happened in the past. And the yellow is where landslides are likely, just because the ground is soft or it's already sloped or whatever. So quite a few landslides around the areas I was looking at. There's one of the cuts. There's the other cut. This one doesn't have landslides. So what I have told my family members is this is where I think you should try to cross. And that is the, I think it's the Montlake cut, I think is what it's called. But they should check with hubs. These are emergency communication hubs between work and our house. So they should check for information as they're traveling north. and I think I've said this multiple times, we will talk about hubs, really fabulous resources. We will talk about hubs next class, the final class. So check with hubs as you're walking to see where you can get more information about. Maybe there's mosquito fleet set up where folks are shipping, are transporting people across the water, and you certainly want to head for that instead of like swimming. My family also has a map of the hubs on their phones so that they know where a hub should be as they walk home. And again, we'll talk more about that next week. If there is no info, if nobody knows how to get across the ship canal, then try the Montlake Cut. And then I have told both of these folks, my husband in Beacon Hill and my son in Capitol Hill, grab your GMRS radio and bring it with you if possible, if no one else around you needs it, so that they can communicate with each other and with myself on their walk home. So those are emergency plans for an earthquake. What you guys need to think about is, where are you going to get your household back together, and how and when? Like, how long would it take? Where would you do it? Maybe it's not everybody going back to your home. Maybe there's a smarter place to meet that would just be easier for everybody to reunite. Everybody's plans are different, but this is what you need to think about. If one of you or both of you are working, then what needs to be done at work before you can leave? Is it just a drop everything and start heading home, or is there work that needs to be done? Are you boarding up windows? Are you locking doors? Or, who knows? Everybody works someplace different. So talk to your employer and find out what they're expecting from you before you leave work and start the trek to reunite with household members. If you have a child, or if you have a child in school, or if you are an educator, then you should know about the reunification plan, which is the plans that schools have to send every child home with the proper adult. It is a very long process. It is very tedious. You need an ID. The school matches you with one adult, one child, one at a time kind of thing. Takes a while. So find out about that reunification plan. If you have a pet and they spend time away from your home, what is your pet sitter's plans for if there's an earthquake? Can they just hang on to the dog until you can get there, or do they need to go somewhere and they're going to leave your dog alone or whatever? So talk to them. And then, do you have anybody in your life with access and functional needs, or elderly parents, or some other kind of special needs? And what kind of accommodations can you make for them until you can all be reunited? I'm going to check chat really quick. Okay. So this is the school's reunification plan, just kind of a visual of it. These pegs on the left are the adults. The ones on the right are kids. And this is a pair, one adult and one child. They have been paired up. So children, adults, bring ID. You will not be allowed to take your child with you if you do not have ID, because they really slow this process down. They're trying to be very, very methodical and very careful about putting the right child with the right adult. So child and adult are paired up and they leave. So again, really slow process. You do not get to go into the school, grab your kid, and run back out. The school locks down, and the process is very slow, intentionally. So we're going to talk about your get home bag. This is the stuff you might want with you wherever you are that would help you walk home. And consider the idea that if you are out and about in a car, or you've taken a bus or the light rail or something like that, however you get around, if you are away from home, your chances of getting back home using some kind of transportation, whether it's a car, bus, light rail, whatever, that's really slimmed down. The chances of you getting home in a vehicle are very, very slim after a big earthquake. And that's because none of the lights are going to work. All the bridges are going to be shut down until they can be inspected and folks know that it's safe to cross. So no bridges, no traffic lights, light rail's going to stop. Any kind of mass transit's going to stop. And as soon as that kind of thing happens, cars are just not going anywhere. So put together a get home bag. We have, in my household, we have one in each car. My husband has something similar at work at his desk, um, just to help him walk home with a little bit more supplies. So we put stuff in our get home bag. It's exactly what you would think of that you might need on the way home. It's on your homework list for the week. You know, it's water, it's there's some granola bars, this is a headlamp with some extra batteries. We've got cash, small bills, because you might be able to and you might want to buy a little something on the way home, and they probably aren't going to be able to make change. So take small bills. This is a whistle. This is a walking map. The black thing there is a trash bag, you know, in case it starts raining and we didn't take our raincoats with us that day for whatever reason. We can poke a hole in the top of a trash bag, poke out some armholes, and it's a decent raincoat. And then always, always, always write down those important phone numbers, including your out of town contact. This is a 3x5 card. This is what I have all over my house in all of these bags. 3x5 card with all the good phone numbers stuffed into a Ziploc bag. And yeah, I've just made a zillion copies and tucked them everywhere I can think of. So create a get home bag. Mine is, it's really very small. Once you get it all compiled, it doesn't take up much room at all. Mine's sitting under the seat in my car, and my husband's is the same way. So put it all together, tuck it in your vehicle, make it really inconspicuous, and hopefully you never need it. So that's a get home bag. Oh, here's all this stuff. One thing I wanted to point out was take a picture of your household members. It doesn't have to be fancy. I took a picture of us and printed it out on my printer. So it's not great quality, but it doesn't matter. It's good enough. If I need to show a picture of my household members, I have the ability to do it. So that's what the picture is for. You also want to take a picture of household members with your pets. Really, really helps reunite you and your pets if you can prove that they belong with you. A picture of the pet is good. A picture of you with your pet is better. It proves an ownership, a relationship. So snap a couple pictures, you know, throw them in this bag and then forget all about it. They'll be good for quite a few years. Paper maps are really good, just because everything's going to look so different. You might think walking home isn't a big deal. It will be, after a significant earthquake, it will be quite different. Everything will look very different. Emergency phone numbers, I talked about those. Put them on a 3x5 card, put them in a plastic bag, tuck them everywhere you need them. And then paper and pen. This was one I just recently, somebody suggested this, and I thought it's a genius idea. In case you're leaving a note, like before you're leaving from work, you're going to write a note saying, hey, this is Anne. I'm doing fine. I left work at 3:30 in the afternoon and I'm walking home. So if you've got to leave a note somewhere, or if you've stopped somewhere and talked to someone, they said, hey, this is the best way to get across the ship canal, and you're really shaken up, write down directions so you can remember it. So paper and pencil, really good to have in this get home bag. We've talked about this before. I want to reiterate this because it's very important. I think they're fabulous resources. Navigation apps that work offline. So if you have a smartphone, download these apps. They're maps, Google Maps and Oz. I don't know how you say this, but basically this stands for open source maps. Open source maps. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Download both of these, put these with all your other smartphone apps. They will really help after a disaster. What you have to do, and this again is on your homework list, what you have to do is you have to download the maps that you're going to need ahead of time. You're actually putting them on your phone so they're always there if you need them. If you do a lot of traveling, this is a really good system to have in place as well. Let's say you're going to, I don't know, Columbus, Ohio. You want to download the map for Columbus, Ohio onto your smartphone so that if, heaven forbid, you're in Columbus and you lose internet, the Wi-Fi goes down for whatever reason, you can still navigate in Columbus, Ohio, because you have that map downloaded onto your phone. And this smartphone app called OSM and open source map will work. So really plugging that smartphone app. This is a really useful gadget to have. I'm not big on encouraging people to buy things, but I think there's a lot of value to this gadget. So this thing on the right is, I think it's about $15. It's not super expensive, but if you can hook these jumper cables directly to a car battery, and this end here is a cigarette lighter. So you also need a cigarette lighter. You need something like this, a cigarette lighter converter. I'm not really sure what they're called, but this goes into your cigarette lighter in your car. For here, you would put it in there, and then this is where your cables would plug in. You can charge your cell phone 20 to 30 times from this car battery and still not drain your battery so much that you can't start your car. So 20 to 30 times you can charge your cell phone and still be able to start your car with this $15 device. So information, if you're interested, information to buy one of these is available in your homework list. Again, the beauty of this is you're taking the power straight from the battery and charging your cell phone. If you leave your battery in the car and you turn the key on in your car to charge your phone that way, you're energizing the entire car. So a lot of electricity is going to a lot of places, and it's not helping. You're wasting a lot of electricity. So this gadget hooks right to your car battery, to a cigarette lighter, converting it to a cable, and charge your cell phone. Like I said, 20 to 30 times, and still be able to start your car. So just a fun gadget, very useful to have. We're going to talk about your recovery plan, and I'm going pretty fast. I'm going to stop for just a second and see if anybody has any questions. I can't see everybody, so if you do have a question, please unmute and just ask. Okay, I'm going to keep going. We're going to talk about the recovery plan, and this was what was in my head when I first got to Seattle and realized I now lived in earthquake country. I thought, well, I'm just going to walk away from my mortgage. You know, we got here in 2014. We bought a house, huge mortgage. Oh my goodness. And I thought, you know, I don't want to stick around. What if I just walk away from my mortgage? Can I do that? Will it, you know, other than being a lousy person, is that possible? Will it follow me? Well, yeah, it will. And we'll talk about why. So FEMA, the federal government, will come in and help, but there's actually very little they can do. So this is what FEMA can do, the federal government. They can help with housing. If we had a big disaster, a big earthquake, they would help us out with housing for about 18 months. So this is the FEMA trailer situation that we all hear about. They will help you if your home is destroyed and it's not habitable. They'll help put you somewhere for 18 months to help you get your feet underneath you. They will also offer you loans, not grants. They're not giving you money. They will offer you a loan. The loan actually comes from the Small Business Administration. You have to have $40,000 personal property damage or $200,000 real estate loss. So these low interest disaster loans come from the Small Business Administration. So unless your house is paid off, you still have a mortgage, plus now you have an additional loan to try and bring your house back to the point where you can live in it. I'm not going to go too much into this. It'll probably change by the time we ever have a disaster. But there are some, FEMA will help out with some other expenses, but they will not make you whole. They will not fix your house for you. They're going to help you with stuff that you might need help with. Personal property. Let's say you left your home and you don't have toothbrush or pajamas or any of that kind of stuff. They'll help you buy that stuff. Medical, dental, funeral expenses that aren't paid for, but any other kinds of insurance, they'll help with that. But it's not much. They don't make you whole. So walk away from your mortgage. Let's see if it's possible. In the foreclosure world, there's such a thing as a recourse versus a non-recourse state, and state as in one of the 50 states. So you're either living in a recourse or a non-recourse state. A recourse state, the borrower is personally liable for the debt. Makes sense. It's your mortgage, of course you're liable. But there is such a thing as a non-recourse state where the lender, the bank or the mortgage company, can only foreclose on your property and sell it for what they can get for it, but they can't come after you for the difference between what you owe and what they were able to sell it for. Washington State is a non-recourse state, sort of. So here's the example. You owe $300,000 on your mortgage. You stopped paying your mortgage because we had a big earthquake and you just didn't want to deal with it. And you left the state. You went to live with your sister-in-law in Alabama. So the bank forecloses on your house. They sell your house for $100,000. In a pure non-recourse state, the bank absorbs that $200,000 difference. They can't come after you for it. But and there's something called a non-judicial foreclosure, which means they don't get a judge involved. It just happens. Judge is not involved, the issue stops there. So the bank sucks up the $200,000 difference. We live in a state where there is such a thing as a judicial foreclosure, meaning they can get judges involved. They can take you to court. The judge can allow the bank to put a lien on all real and personal property, garnish your wages, etc., for the $200,000 difference. So you are not able to walk away. I mean, you might be able to, but banks in Washington State or mortgage companies in Washington State do have an avenue to garnish your wages and get back the money that they lost on your property if you have walked away. If you have refinanced your house, consult a lawyer, because I am not a lawyer. That's it for tonight. Pretty decent time. Next week is going to be very fun. It's preparing with neighbors and this emergency communication hub network that I keep alluding to. Fascinating, wonderful group of folks that volunteer their time to help prepare their communities, their individual neighborhoods to withstand a disaster. So we're all working on making ourselves and our neighbors more resilient. So that's next week, April 26th at 7 p.m. I'm going to stop sharing and see if anybody has any questions. I'm not seeing any.
Just out of curiosity, if you're a renter, what kind of, and you have a lease? Do you know anything about that? I realize you're not a lawyer, but
Oh, I don't. That's a really good question. I'm surprised I haven't thought of that and looked it up before. I will see what I can find out about it. My guess is if you want to walk away from your rental lease, they might be able to sue you for what's left on your lease, but it might be worth it to get out of here and stop, and not have to deal with broken sewer lines for months and
Right.
months.
And I think it
Um,
depends if the property is livable. Like if it's not actually livable, then they can't hold you to that lease because
That makes
they sold you is not liable. So if you can't physically live in your property, I think even now without a disaster, I think less than a week. If you go more than a week without it being able to be lived in, it's very short. And then you have the right to withdraw from your lease. I would
sweet.
check with a rental lawyer, but it's a very short amount of time that the
Yeah.
landlord has to make your your home whole before like they can hold you accountable to that lease.
Thanks, Jen. That's really good information. Yeah, great. And Sue, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I'm gonna probably miss next week. I'm on vacation. Is there a way, are you recording these?
Yes, they're recorded. Every single class is recorded and they're put up on YouTube. And that comes out in the follow-up email of where to go find the last class. So, yep,
Great, thanks.
just pay attention to email. Is everybody on the call? Is everybody getting the emails? I often worry that they're going into spam. Okay, I'm seeing some
I haven't-
shaking heads.
I haven't seen them, so we should look, huh?
Yes, they might. It will come from Seattle Prepares at Gmail. So it definitely look in your junk folder or whatever, and certainly give me a, just email me if you're not getting them. Some folks, some of the emails bounce for weird reasons. I almost always have problems with Comcast emails; those bounce back a lot. So, yeah, just reach out to me if you're not getting information from me. If you're not getting follow-up emails, reach out and I will make sure you get them. And hopefully, you guys are getting your homework, the sheets, and following through on the homework. This is all great to learn, and I'm thrilled that you're learning. But if you don't take some of those preparedness steps, don't gripe at me after the earthquake that you didn't get it done. Okay, I don't see any more hands. Any questions? All right, I will see you all next week. We'll talk about emergency communication hubs and also stuff you can do with your neighbors. So
Thank you.
have a good night.